Harvard University study about racism in Europe showed that Serbia is the least racist country. Many foreigners were surprised with this result. They associate all the bad things with Serbs. They are convinced that Serbs have to be racist. Well, that's not the case. All Serb enemies are white, which means that race is not the cause of the hatred. I have to point out that Serbia was declared the least racist, which means there is racism present in Serbia. But there is less racism in Serbia than in other European countries. How did Harvard University conduct their research? Participants from European countries were shown photos of white or black faces. They were then offered positive and negative words to associate with the faces. Harvard University made a map of Europe based on average score of test takers. Most Serb participants didn't connect negative words with black faces. Why? There are several reasons, and I'm going to explore them all. Serb nationalism has nothing to do with skin color. Nationalism is a real problem in Serbia. My sociology professor gave wonderful explanation about the difference between nationalism and patriotism. Nationalism is when one thinks that his nation is better than others. Patriotism is when one loves his nation but doesn't think their nation is better than others. I consider myself Serb patriot. And I don't think I'm better than Somalians or Ethiopians. Far-right groups in Serbia never claim superiority based on being white. They base superiority on being Serbs. They think they are better than Germans, French, English. They also say that Serbs are the oldest nation in the world. Again, this has nothing to do with the race. Non-aligned movement was very popular among Serbs. What is non-aligned movement? During Cold War, USA and Soviet Union polarized the world. Yugoslavia didn't want to side with either USA or Soviet Union. There were other countries that shared Yugoslavia's opinion. They all decided to form non-aligned movement. The movement was established in 1961 in Belgrade. Belgrade was at the same time capital of both Serbia and Yugoslavia. The main politicians who established the movement were Yugoslav President Tito, Indian Prime Minister Nehru, Egyptian President Nasser, Ghanaian President Nkrumah, and Indonesian President Sukarno. African and Asian politicians often visited Belgrade. Before their visits, Yugoslav newspapers wrote positive articles about their countries. We were told that Indonesia, India, Egypt, Ghana are wonderful places worth to visit. African and Asian students came to Yugoslavia to study at the universities. This means that Yugoslav citizens had contact with intelligent, hard-working people coming from Africa and Asia. We had no contact with their criminals. This means that Serbs wouldn't associate African face with being criminals. Serbs have no reason to have negative feelings about Africans and Asians. Some Africans remained in Belgrade after they graduated from the university. Famous TV show host Ivon Jafali was born in Belgrade. Her father came from Congo as student. Yvonne said in one interview that she only had problem with one boyfriend's father because of her skin color. Otherwise, she was accepted in Belgrade. Members of non-aligned movement were against imperialism, colonialism, racism. Non-aligned movement included 55% of world population. A chair is elected at each summit. Tito served as chair between 1961 and 1964. Many Serbs were proud of the fact that Tito was so highly esteemed by foreigners. In 1989, Yugoslavia got the chair again. It was shared by Janez Drnovšek, Boris Savjović, Stjepan Mesić, and Branko Kostić. Janez Drnovšek would later become Prime Minister and President of Slovenia. Stjepan Mesić would later become Prime Minister and President of Croatia. This means that other Yugoslav nations apart from Serbs were also involved with the movement. Harvard University study shows that former Yugoslav nations are also less racist than the rest of Europe. The last chair from Yugoslavia was Dobrica Ćosić, a famous Serb writer. He served 1 year as president of Yugoslavia. Ćosić is often accused of being Serb nationalist. As far as I know, he was never accused of being racist. Serb intellectuals often flirted with nationalism. But there were no white supremacy theories. Racism was never present in mainstream Yugoslav and Serbian media. Yugoslavia's Sixth Republic Federation fell apart in 1992. In 1992, Yugoslav membership in non-aligned movement was terminated. Serbia and Montenegro formed new rump Yugoslavia. In 2003, Yugoslavia changed its name to Serbia and Montenegro. The union was dissolved in 2006. Today, Serbia, Montenegro, Croatia and Bosnia have observer status in non-aligned movement. No former Yugoslav country joined the movement as member. History of Serbs and Africans. Serbs never had colonies in Africa. Serbs never participated in the African slave trade. This means that there is no bad blood between Serbs and Africans. In fact, Serbs often identified with the suffering of slaves in America. In 1459, the last remnants of Serbian land was conquered by Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire treated Serbs and other Christians as second-class citizens. Unknown number of Serbs was sold into slavery by Ottomans. This was happening until 1800s. Serb Prince Miloš had to buy back enslaved Serbs from Ottomans. Serb nationalists claim huge number of Serbs became Ottoman slaves. They also say that present-day Turks all have some Serb blood due to these slaves. I think this is exaggeration since we don't know how many Serbs survived in the slavery. Serb nationalists also ignore the fact that many Ottoman slaves came from non-Serb peoples. Still, Serbs were staunch enemies of the slavery. Serbia got first constitution in 1835. One article of constitution says that any slave becomes free when they enter Serbia. More importantly, all Serbian laws apply to everyone. There were no discriminatory racial laws. Serbs were shocked by the way Americans treated blacks. Africans in Belgrade were allowed to ride a bus, eat at a restaurant, and attend university. During World War II, Serbs were deemed racially inferior, according to Nazi. Even today, Serb enemies claim that Serbs aren't truly white. The joke is on them because Serbs never cared about skin color. Serb enemies are usually racist because they do care about skin color. They believe that Serbs are inferior due to being non-white, among other things. I consider myself white, but I wouldn't be offended if someone classified me as non-white. Being white or not being white doesn't bother me. Serb enemies also claim that Serbs were forced to care about Africans by Yugoslav authorities. They also say that Serbs did everything for a reason. But this isn't true. There is a street in Belgrade named after Patrice Lumumba. Lumumba was Prime Minister of Congo who was killed in 1961. Serbs had no ulterior motive for naming the street after Lumumba. Entertainment. One of the most popular foreign groups in Belgrade was Boney M. All members of the band were black. I grew up watching their music videos on TV. The Cosby Show was hugely popular in Yugoslavia. People loved Sidney Poitier, Denzel Washington, Will Smith. Serbian radio stations often play songs by Whitney Houston and Beyoncé. Some kids in Serbia adore rap music. Since 1990s, there were rappers in Serbia. Luckily, we had no beefs among Serb rappers and there were no rap-related shootings. Serbs also loved team sports, including basketball. Significant number of Serb players played in NBA. Thanks to this fact, many Serbs watched NBA games. Michael Jordan was extremely popular in Serbia. For Serbs, Pele was one of the greatest footballers ever. Pele retired from Brazilian national team after their match with Yugoslavia in 1971. Now, is there racism in Serbia? Of course there is racism in Serbia. Racism is a global problem alongside misogyny, poverty. I would say every country in the world has some racist groups. The only difference is how influential they are. All mainstream political parties in Serbia are against racism. Even far-right parties do not embrace racism. Some fringe groups in Serbia accept neo-Nazi ideology. One such group protested in the streets. They managed to gather 30 people. Serb enemies use the term neo-Nazi to describe some bigger groups and political parties in Serbia. This is wrong because these groups are not neo-Nazi since they don't use Nazi symbols nor praise Hitler. They are nationalistic and they do hate certain Balkan nations, but they are not racist. What about football fans? There were racist incidents involving football fans from Serbia. They used racial slurs and made monkey noises. I have to say football fans are extremely rude subculture. They like to insult everyone. Some footballers are mocked for marrying promiscuous women. Some footballers are bullied due to their physical characteristics, such as height. One famous Serb player is labeled as retard. This doesn't justify usage of racial slurs, but it does explain them. Also, due to cultural differences, words have different impact. My friend liked to climb trees and he was called monkey by his own parents. The Serbian verb majmunisati means monkeying around and applies to everyone no matter their skin color. What about Roma living in Serbia? Roma population is often discriminated in Serbia. But it has nothing to do with the skin color. I would compare the situation to how Irish were treated in England. In the past, English saw Irish as lazy thieves who have too many children. Significant number of Serbs have the same opinion of Roma. Serbian state is trying to keep Roma kids in schools. Serbia is also trying to issue birth certificates and ID cards to Roma. Most Roma in Serbia suffer verbal abuse, though there were some serious incidents. In 1997, two young neo-Nazis beat to death Roma boy Dusan Jovanovic. Dusan was only 13 years old. The killers weren't much older than Dusan. Serbian public was shocked by the crime. In 2022, newspapers wrote again about Dusan, marking 25 years since his tragic death. Thanks to the misinformation, many foreigners believe that Serbia is heaven for white nationalism, while Serbia has a problem with ethnic nationalism. Ethnic nationalism is a problem in the Balkans. All Balkan nations in general think themselves superior than others. Africans visiting the Balkans can expect strange questions and stares. One internet user said about the Balkans, "Local nations are too busy hating one another that they have no energy left to be racist."